Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Lakendra Smith. I'm the Health Sector Director for Project Transition under the direction of Dr. Joaquin Wallace. Project Transition is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are in the business of helping people transition, development, and welfare to work. I have here today with us Curtis Henry of Wagner College. He's a strength and conditioning coach, played football at The Ohio State University, and he is assisting us in our interview series where we interview former athletes as they transition into the workforce. Curtis, how are you? And if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hello. My name is Curtis Henry. I'm first and foremost doing amazing. It's been a great Monday so far. The kids on the campus are starting to come back in, and so I've been able to sit down with a little bit more coaches and fine-tune some of the ideas that we have for this next semester. And so it's just been a real exciting time at work, and I'm excited to be at this school at Wagner.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you don't mind, would you enlighten us about how you were able to become a football player at The Ohio State University and how the lessons that you've learned from any angle or every aspect help you to get to where you are now?
Well, first and foremost, being a walk-on at Ohio State, the priority for me before I even made the team was take care of academics. And so before I thought about the idea of, maybe I am a Division I athlete or, maybe I have an opportunity to walk on at a prestigious university like Ohio State, I had to tell myself, hey, books come first. And even when I made the teams, books still came first. And so, number one was making sure that academically I was in a spot where I felt comfortable taking on a new load like that. After that, it became a lot more of a mental conditioning than it was a physical conditioning. I felt like I was already in decent enough shape, and whatever shape that I was in, I knew that the school had the knowledge, the resources to develop me into an even better athlete. So it wasn't that I was too worried about where I was physically, as long as I was able to perform at my best at that point. But, more than anything, it was about being confident in, my ability to walk, my ability to hang with some, 5-star athletes, some future NFL talents, being comfortable within myself that, hey, whether I see the field every game and, I become an amazing player, or, I'm just a walk-on who's here to help make the team better in and out of practice. Whatever role that I have and whatever role that I take on, I need to be comfortable with that role and, more importantly, with myself.
Oh, that's awesome. So your mindset is very unique in what you've just verbalized, because most athletes, when they go to a school, they want to play, walk on or not, they want to play. And your mindset and your demeanor was, I just want to help. What tools did you use to develop that demeanor?
Honestly, it was just my upbringing. Coming from the inner city of Cleveland, Ohio, I always knew that life wasn't going to, give me the quote unquote handouts or whatever the case may be. And that in order to succeed, whether it was professionally, academically, or, within athletics, I needed to work. And it wasn't a question on if I was going to work. The question always became, how hard was I going to? And, I think there's almost like 2 or 3 phases into, walking onto the team. Of course, the first piece is, making sure that you're academically eligible to do so, making the team. And then, of course, which is, if you talk to any former walk-on or, anyone who's played like football at a Power 5 school or anything of that nature, they will tell you that staying on the team is more difficult than making it. Every day is a grind. Every day, I work at a smaller Division I school now, and, for me, I hear Division I and I think, hey, you're at the best of the best. Yeah, you may not necessarily be at the number 1 school in the country, or, you may not be the number 1 ranked athlete on the planet, but you're in a position where if you work hard enough and if you're diligent enough, you can strive for those things. And it may not happen, and it's fine if it doesn't happen, but we can't leave anything unturned. We can't leave any stone unturned. Every day you have to work harder than what you did the day before. And if you won beforehand, you got to work even harder to win now, because now there's a target on you. And so I think just that relentless reminder of, hey, you got to work, you got to earn it, you got to earn it, you have to earn it. And of course, being told by the coaches like, hey, this spot isn't guaranteed for you, at any point. If I do bad enough, they can cut me from the team and they don't lose anything from it. They can find another walk on at my position or whatever it may be. And so just that relentless reminder that, hey, you got today, and today you have to prove yourself. And the next day you'll have to prove yourself over and over and over again. Really just helped me understand that I needed to have a workman's mentality.
That is nice. I recently came across a researcher who, she did this research and she determined that there were two traits that successful people had, and it was hope and it was grind, right? And so clearly you had hope, and clearly it sounded like you grinded every day, especially because you were a walk-on, right? And you did something extremely difficult, which was you lost your black stripe as a sophomore, junior? Like something that really is kind of unheard of. And so out of those trials and tribulations of deciding to walk on, being undersized, probably not being the quickest, probably not being the strongest, knowing that you could have played somewhere else, but you decided to attend the Ohio State University. What skills did you learn as an athlete, and what mindset did you learn as an athlete that you felt like was transferable into the workplace?
You always have a little more. So my first off season with the team was 2016. And I remember the coaching staff, they were upset that we didn't win the national championship. Coming off of 2015, we had just won. And then leading up to that, I was a medical walk-on. So if someone were to get injured, they would have me on call. And so when I actually was fully on the team that offseason, the biggest thing was when that wintertime workout came, they wanted to more or less instill the fact that whatever goals that we had set for ourselves, whatever goals we had set for ourselves as a team, they weren't good enough. There was always more. There's always more. And so they talked about this thing called the edge, where they would tell us every day, hey, get to the edge, take that leap off the edge, and we'll catch you. And by the time I walked on, I was a junior at the time. And so I was mentally already in a space where I was kind of a little bit more mature, I guess you could say. But the idea of getting to the edge didn't really connect with me until I got to that edge. And, once I got to that edge, that's when I really started to make an impact at practice and, eventually losing my black stripe, which was kind of like a brotherhood ceremony where at Ohio State, everyone who just makes it to the team, whether it's a walk-on, a scholarship guy, a transfer, whoever it may be, they all have a black stripe on their helmet, which is saying that, hey, they haven't earned it yet. From there, you got to work. And, it's plain and simple. For a walk-on, it was, hey, at practice, you got to give, the first and second team the best look you can possibly get. For incoming freshmen, it was, hey, you need to show that you're worth the scholarship that we gave you, that you're worth being on the field. And, for transfers, it was, more or less a hybrid between the two worlds. Okay, hey, you need to prove that you are capable enough mentally and physically to get that black stripe taken off, but you're also capable of pushing yourself past the point and, if need be, understanding that your role might be limited compared to what you actually believe.
So Curtis, Project Transition is in the business of supporting people and connecting people to places. And support is very important to us. So because support is important and indicative to some levels of success, what's your understanding or comprehension of the word support? What does that mean to you?
It's being there for someone, having someone's back. And, when I think of the word support, I almost want to say supporting someone and, use the word in a sentence or use the word for its definition. But, for sure, I believe it's an action, and that action is, being accountable or helping someone be accountable for themselves, helping someone be responsible for themselves, helping someone get over a hurdle, whatever it may be.
Can you tell us some times in your life or one significant moment in your life where you felt supported?
Sure. I've had quite a few moments. My immediate family, my two brothers, my mother and my father, they have been so supportive to who I am. And, I feel like every day I talk to them and every moment I get to spend with them, I feel like without me realizing it, they're getting to understand a deeper version of myself. A version of myself that maybe as a kid, I felt a little ashamed of, or felt like, my brothers would pick on me in a certain way, or felt like, oh, you know what, maybe my family won't accept me for that belief or for what I want. And then, of course, you can take it to football. I have a former strength coach that I actually still talk to now, Coach Talon Birmingham. He was an intern at Ohio State strength conditioning staff. The relationship that I built with the strength conditioning coaches while I was at Ohio State is, a huge reason behind why I'm a strength coach now. Them bringing me into their world and, understanding a little bit more to exercise than, just bench pressing it, trying to lift up as much weight as possible. Understanding how to move the bar fast, understanding how to program, how to progressively overload. All those little things that I didn't really take into account when I was, exercising by myself or when I was training myself, that goes into, building an athlete. And like I said, they've helped me when I was a walk-on the team, and, the relationship that I've carried with him, Coach King, Coach Rodenberg, Coach Quinn, Coach Tooze, Coach Brady Collins, all those guys that, helped me in the weight room when I was a walk-on, have helped me get to the position where I'm at now, where, I found something that I'm passionate about. I found a career field that I feel like I could do every single day, and I'll never get tired of it. And, I'll always see the reward behind it, if that makes sense.
Yes. So let's take a little turn. Your rival just won the national championship, Michigan.
Oh.
So the quarterback's pregame routine involved meditation on the field, right? 15, 20 years ago, you would not have seen that. People would not have embraced that. If I'm not mistaken, the quarterback at Washington, I had a very close relationship with his cognitive performance specialist. Right? Let's look at Russell Wilson. Had decent years, right, with the Broncos, but not necessarily impactful, if that makes sense, to some degree, to the extent that they want him gone, right? And so you're looking at his struggles. He struggled for 2 years, but what happened 2 years ago? His cognitive performance specialist died, and nobody acknowledged that, right?
Yeah.
And so this huge critical component of athletics from the mental and cognitive aspect is being intertwined, but you don't necessarily see it being intertwined across the board at all levels. I won't call a specific conference, but previously we did an interview with a young man. He transferred from an American university and an American conference, right, to a Big 12 school. And one of the things he placed emphasis on was it wasn't about football. It was about, we're going to invest in the person, and the person will at some point invest in football. So from a mental health standpoint, what resources do you think you needed, whether it was playing football, whether it was personally, whether it's professionally, at any phase during your career as an athlete, even transitioning out of athletics into your career? What resources do you think you would need, or what resources do you think you should have embraced that would have helped your mental?
When I played, I had suffered a high ankle sprain right at the start of fall camp, which for, most walk-ons, that's like our Super Bowl. That's like our opportunity to prove with pads on that we belong here. And, like I said, and it could be at whatever capacity, whether as a starter, as a practice player, or, just as someone who helps the team out in whatever role they can. I remember it was a team offense versus team defense drill. And so we were just kind of going through our plays, and I get down into my 3-point stance. The whistle gets blown, ball gets snapped, and as I get out of my stance, immediately feel a sharp pain in my ankle. And it wasn't like I was getting blocked. It wasn't like I had, 2 linemen on me. It was literally getting from that 3-point stance into, trying to work on my pass rush drill. And I remember for the longest time, it ate me up. It really did. Even immediately afterwards, because, I feel like, hey, at the time, I felt like I could make an impact, and I feel like it sounds egotistical, but, to play at a school like that and to walk on at a school like that, in your mind, you have to have some sort of supreme confidence in yourself in some way, shape, or form. And so, for me, I was like, dude, if I can make it to camp, I'll show them like, hey, I ain't nothing to be reckoned with. And, when it happened, it felt like the world shut down. And, they said it was a high ankle sprain, and that, if I just get my ankle taped up and, things like that, I would be able to, perform. But daily I was getting put into a soft cast I couldn't turn off my foot. I couldn't put any pressure on that foot at all. And, after that first day of me having to deal with that ankle from start to finish at practice, at the end of it, because I couldn't perform in the team drills, I had to go to the pit. And the pit was more or less, it was a baseball field, an old baseball field that a lot of the folks that were injured went to. And it may not have been for every injured person, but I think they've made it a little bit more for like people that they were not too sure about, whether it was for good or bad reasons, whether it was like, hey, we don't know if he'll be ready for the season, and so he just needs to work on getting, a little bit more athletic, or, hey, I think that they're trying to milk an injury, so we're going to punish them by doing this. I remember that first day in the pit, my coach, Coach Colin, comes up to me, and he's like, Kurt, I love you. I think you're a great kid, which is why I'm telling you that you have to practice tomorrow. It's either that or you're going home. And, I remember at that moment, it felt like I wasn't heard. It felt like it was almost my fault that I was hurt and that there was no support for me. And, I look back at it now, and of course there was support for me, but it wasn't as upfront as it could have been, or as it should have been, in my opinion. And so, like, during that first injury, and that injury affected me, it still affects me to this day. Anything with a lot of impact on it, a lot of plyometrics, anything of that nature. And so, when you first get like a real injury and you kind of hear that conscious voice tell you like, hey, if you don't get it right, or if you can't perform, we kind of have to make a decision. And you hear that in your ear. And, for some people, if it is a fake injury, all right, well, I can't milk this anymore. For me, it was like, okay, you guys told me it was just a high ankle sprain. I can't plant my foot on the ground. There has to be more to this. You guys are putting me in a soft fiberglass cast every day for practice, or before every practice, because at that point we were still doing 2-a-days. There's something off. And initially I thought it was just me. I thought it was just, I'm just not getting to that edge like I talked about at the beginning. And it feels like at that time, it was almost like me in it by myself. And so having that support system, whether it's in a CPS, whether it's a coach that can work with me a little bit more one-on-one, a second diagnosis, whatever it may have been. And, maybe that second diagnosis tells me, hey, he broke his ankle. And they say, hey, we appreciate your time, Curtis. We got to let you go. But just having like that moment to have someone confirm with me that I'm not going crazy, that this injury is legit and that the pain that you're feeling isn't fake or you're not trying to milk it, I think would have helped me, for the rest of that season.
Did you all have access to cognitive performance specialists, i.e. CPS, at Ohio State?
I don't believe we did. At that point, what was this, 2016? At least it wasn't something that was brought forward to me and was made abundantly clear, like, hey, this is your CPS, this is the sports doc, this is the mental health expert here for the program. That just wasn't made abundantly clear on my end.
Do you believe that was because you were a walk-on?
Partially, yes. And another piece of it was also because, Coach Collins told me, hey, it's either you got to get right now or, we got to move on from you. It became a lot more of a means to kind of crawl out of the hole for me. And so, although I was struggling with it mentally, it was fueling me to try to perform as best as I could. It fueled me to show my value, even on one leg. And, if I would have said something, maybe they would have sent me to, a sports psychologist, or, maybe they would have found me a CPS that I could talk to a little bit about it, or, give me an opportunity to vent, or, something as simple as saying, hey, you're saying it's a high ankle sprain, but you haven't been able to walk right for, a month. Let's reevaluate this. I think those little things, although I used that moment as fuel to kind of keep at the forefront of my coaches' minds that I bring value to the team, it was almost like a double-edged sword where, yeah, I show value, but in my mind, I was fighting that battle. Am I worthy? Am I milking this? Am I going crazy? Is this injury worse than what it is, or is it actually better than what I believe it is? And, I'm kind of psyching myself out of it.
Totally understood. As a former athlete, and I've suffered significant injuries, and I totally understand the pressure that you feel to perform. So I totally get it. So Curtis, as a graduate of The Ohio State University, what challenges did you face transitioning as a new grad into the workspace and into your preferred career choice?
The biggest thing was being comfortable with saying that I made a mistake. growing up in Black households, one of the big things I was always taught was that you have to be a STEM major. STEM. It'll help bring the family's name up. It'll help you make money and things of that nature. And it'll be something that your parents can like tell their friends and like they can be proud about, which is totally understandable. But for the vast majority of people, STEM might not be something that they're interested in. At the time, I didn't realize that exercise science and being a strength conditioning coach was a viable career choice. And so even throughout college, I struggled with the idea of what I wanted to do in life. And so because I struggled with the idea of it, I didn't really put much thought behind it. And, you can ask anyone who knew me in college. I used to tell people that I was a lot more prepared for a zombie apocalypse than life after school, just because I truly didn't know what I wanted to do. And so over time, I came to realize like, hey, regardless of if I want to or not, or if I wanted to end or not, college was ending soon. And I need to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. In my head, in my heart of hearts, and still to this day, always wanted to be in entertainment. Always wanted to do stand-up. Always wanted to make a career out of being an actor. I used to write books when I was younger. I used to write down in my note apps different TV projects that I had in mind. And so that was something that I was passionate in. But like I said, being in a Black household, it was like STEM. And so when I first got out of school, I was like, all right, well, what do I want to do? I need to do something that can help push my family's name higher. Let me be a banker. I immediately hated it. Within the first month. And it's not to say that it was a bad job or anything like that. I just knew it wasn't for me. I suck at sitting down and looking at a computer for 8 hours and wearing a suit and tie and, hopping on the phone and trying to sell to people day in and day out on credit cards and loans. And I needed something that I could be more active in. And I also needed something that made me feel good inside. And there were just moments that I didn't feel like I was actively helping someone in that position. And so I left it. And at that point, I took on a role as a technical recruiter for a tech agency. And it was a decent job. It was fine. It still just wasn't something that I was passionate about. And COVID happened. And once COVID happened, I lost that job. And the goal was to leave that job within like October 2020 so I could either study to become a fireman or study to become a strength coach. And, once COVID happened, it just kind of pushed everything forward. I got accepted into the Fire Academy in Columbus, but I wasn't going to start, or I wasn't slated to start until December 2020. Well, by the beginning of April 2020, I was out of a job and I was out of a paycheck and I had no long-term source of income established yet, or I didn't really understand ways that I would be able to support myself. Although I was ready to become a fireman, I told myself, hey, study for your CSCS and see what you can do with it. See if you can, get into a strength conditioning field and, see how that works before you decide to do something that is as difficult as being a fireman. I started studying for it. I read the book. I enjoyed every single word that I read. It was almost like reading poetry for the first time. It was like, wow, this is beautiful. This is all connected. And, it took for me to bump my head a few times. It took for me to change up the idea of what I wanted to do in life, for me to understand that it's okay to not have everything set. And it's okay to have an idea in your mind, but that idea doesn't necessarily become fruitful for you, whether it's financially, mentally, or emotionally, or whatever aspect that you would like it to be. And when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. It's okay. Life is going to have its ups and downs. And the faster you get acclimated to those ups and downs, the easier it will be to navigate in between those ebbs and flows of life as an adult.
That's a great word. Speaking of navigating through those ebbs and flows of life, at some point we all experience challenges of loss, right? I know you recently experienced loss. What advice or what resources or tools do you have for people to just help them navigate those challenges of personal losses?
Back in October of 2022, my father passed away suddenly. I had just moved down to El Paso, Texas, which was the first time I've ever left the state of Ohio, the furthest I've ever been from anyone close to me in my life. And so, when that happened, the isolation of being so far away from family hit heavy. Fortunately enough, the people that I worked with during that time really helped me when I didn't feel like I could be helped. And, by all means, I didn't feel like I was in a spot where I could accept help. So, first and foremost, having people that, although I didn't want to lean on them, I leaned on them. Having those people be there to support me meant the world of a difference. And also, and it's still something that I deal with to this day, being okay with not being okay has been something that not only I've had to tell myself over and over again, but something that I tell people every day. It's okay to not be okay. I can't tell you the amount of times I've cried over the past year and a half. I can't tell you. Every waking moment I think about it. I think about him, just kind of leaving. I think about the transition between life and death, and what does all of this means, and I even contemplate not necessarily the meaning behind life, but kind of just like the purpose of everything. For a long time, it was like, I don't want to get close to anyone anymore. Like, that really hurt me, and it was a hurt that I've never experienced before. But, in due time, you'll never, quote unquote, get better. That was one thing I've always thought was something that would happen, and it doesn't. And it's only been 2 years, and I know for a fact that I will never be okay again, or I will never be that old version of myself again. But it's okay to evolve and, to kind of take on this new outlook that you have on life now that someone that you've lost or someone that you were close to has passed away. But also just that emptiness that you feel. And it's not an emptiness of, I don't really know how to describe that emptiness. It's just there permanently. And there's no substitution for it. I've tried with different relationships. I've tried with friends, family. I've tried to get even closer to, my brothers and my mom. And, although my relationship with them has gotten stronger, and, same thing with the rest of my family, there is no Willie Earl Henry Sr. There is no one that can replace my father. And there's stuff that we used to do together. There were moments that reminded me of him because he taught me about it, or, he showed me this, or he showed me that used to mess me up. And now it's a lot more like theoretical things that kind of happen. This past week I was at an indoor water park in New Jersey. And as I'm like walking up to get on one of the slides, in my head, it just popped up like, man, how would this experience been different if it was you and your father? And just like that, I just kind of drop into one of those states where it's just like, man, there goes that hole. That hole feels bigger than ever. And, when that happens, I have to tell myself, like, cry. It's okay. If you got to cry, cry. If you got to step away from people, step away from people. Do what you need to do. But it's okay to do that, You don't have to try to hide your emotions. And you don't have to try to act like you're in a perpetual sad state. Like, it was tough for me to see past him passing initially to the point that I was just constantly in a depressive state. And eventually I had to tell myself, like, dude, this isn't you. This isn't working. You got to get at least a little better. And I got a little better. And, each day became a goal to get a little bit better than where I was the day before. And if I were to fall down, I could still try to get better than that day. I can still try to keep living,
Thank you for that. Project Transition, one of our goals is to help people identify certain career choices and certain elements of life goals early and help them navigate through that process efficiently, right? So if we knew that you wanted to be a stand-up comedian, Project Transition would assist you in finding a mentor and helping you navigate those areas so that you wouldn't bum, right? And so one of the projects that we have upcoming that we're about to launch is our mentorship program called Project Success. So how important do you think mentorship is in navigating, especially unknown and unusual employment opportunities, such as something so tedious as being a stand-up comedian?
I think having a support system and having a mentor you can rely on, not necessarily consistently, but someone that you can, bring questions to, someone that you can express some of your prouder moments and some of your, more dark moments. Having someone that is on your side just makes a world of a difference. And that's for anyone. You can be the most confident person in the world, but when you attack something by yourself, you feel it. And you can be the least confident person in the world. And having people on your side and having people there to support you makes you feel like you still have a chance. There's some comedians that are light years ahead of me now that I help, kind of mentor in a sense. especially when I was in Columbus and I was doing stand up heavy. And at that point, I've won a few competitions and things of that nature. Because I was becoming a fairly good comic by those standards. And, I look at those comedians now and I look at the relationship that I have with some of them. And I don't need to necessarily talk to them every day, but I still get questions from them about doing stand up. And, some of them even ask me like, hey, when am I going to get back out there? And it's something that I want to do. But, the fact that I've seen those people grow to be light years ahead of where I'm at now as a comedian, light years ahead of where I was when I was at my peak as a comedian, even as a strength coach, being able to help younger strength coaches and being a little older and having like the life experiences of, trying new things and exploring different possibilities and different ways of accomplishing goals makes all the difference. And being able to give to people support that at times it felt like I didn't necessarily have warms my heart in a real way, in ways that money doesn't do for me, or, laughter doesn't do for me, or being around family doesn't do. Just seeing people that you invested in, whether it's a small amount or you poured your heart and soul into, making sure that they get better in whatever sport or whatever career path they take, seeing them flourish, it just brings a smile to my face,
That was awesome. I do have one last question. If you were a plant, what plant would you be?
I would say doesn't need a lot of sunlight. It does really well with indirect sunlight. It's actually optimal that it's in indirect sunlight. And I don't like to go outside too often. But more importantly, it has really beautiful thick leaves that when you feel them, they're like silky smooth. And those leaves are thick, but they're very beautiful. And I kind of feel like that sometimes myself. I have a perceived thick layer that most people feel like they can't break through. But in all honesty, once you say hello to me once, you see the beautiful piece of me, which is a person that at 6 o'clock in the morning is going to scream good morning to you from across the room. Or the person that, whenever you don't want to hear it or whenever you feel like you don't need it, you're going to get an I love. That's just who I am, is someone who has a perceived thick layer, just being a bulky dude. But when you really get into the weeds of everything, you realize that I just got a beautiful soul. And, I'll open up to anyone. You can see that piece of me.
That was awesome. So before we wrap this interview up, do you have any upcoming projects or any events?
My swimming team getting ready for their conference tournament. And next week, it'll be a full month since I've had them. And I'm excited to see how they do. Seeing how they've responded to me as a coach has been beautiful. And so they have their tournament coming up the third week of February. And it'll be for the whole week. And I'm excited to see how they do. Hopefully they win first place, because if they do, I'll get in the pool with them for practice. And, it'll be a great time. In the meantime, though, as I get more settled into pursuing my master's, I want to get back into stand-up. That's something that I really want to do. And so stay tuned for that. If you're in the New York City area, I miss doing stand-up. And so that'll be something that, as a treat to myself, I'm going to pick back up.
Thank you, Curtis, for joining us. This is Dr. Lakendra Red Smith of Project Transition. Look out for Project Success to launch soon. Check out our socials. Check out Curtis' socials. And again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, guys.